The social worker who came to evaluate my dementia slipped a folded note into my purse when no one was looking. The note had only one sentence: "Leave your house tonight. Don't tell anyone." For hours, I kept telling myself it had to be some kind of mistake. But that night, as I stood silently on the staircase and heard voices coming from the kitchen, I realized the note was not a meaningless warning. It was a sign that I had just heard something I was never supposed to hear. I'm truly grateful you clicked on this video. Before the story begins, I'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you right now? Comment below with your city or country. It means more than you know to see who's listening. A quick heads up. This tale includes fictional elements woven in for storytelling and learning. Any overlap with real names or locations is unintentional, but the takeaway, that's yours to keep. I should have known something was wrong the moment the social worker's hands started trembling. It was a Tuesday morning in late October, one of those gray Seattle days where the sky pressed down like wool and the air smelled of rain. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang at 10 o'clock. "Mom, that's the social worker." My daughter-in-law Rachel called from the living room, her voice bright with false cheer. "Remember I told you he was coming for the home visit?" I didn't remember. But at 68, there were many things Rachel claimed I'd forgotten lately. Appointments I'd supposedly missed. Conversations we'd apparently had. My son Daniel had started looking at me with concern, the kind you give someone whose mind is slipping. Strange because my mind had never been clearer. "Of course," I said, setting down my world's best grandma mug. "I'll be right there." The man in my foyer was early 50s, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, navy blazer over khakis. His knuckles were white from gripping his leather portfolio. "Mrs. Morrison." His voice was steady, but those hands told a different story. "I'm Gerald Thompson from Seattle Elder Services. Your daughter-in-law contacted us about concerns with your living situation. She mentioned you'd been diagnosed with early-stage dementia and might need assistance." The words hit like cold water. "Diagnosed? I haven't been diagnosed with anything." "Oh, Helen, don't you remember?" Rachel's hand landed on my arm, light controlling. "Dr. Patterson told us last month. We discussed it as a family." "I've never seen anyone named Dr. Patterson." Rachel's laugh was soft pitying. "You see what I mean, Mr. Thompson? The memory loss is getting worse. That's why we called. We want Mom safe." My son Daniel appeared from upstairs, arms crossed, wearing a button-down instead of his usual T-shirt. They'd prepared for this visit. "Mrs. Morrison," Gerald said carefully. "Would you mind if I looked around? I need to assess the living environment for safety hazards." "Of course not. But I need to be clear, I don't have dementia. I've never been diagnosed with any cognitive issues." Gerald's eyes met mine, sharp and assessing. "Walk me through a typical day. How do you manage cooking, cleaning, medications?" "I cook most evenings. Do my own laundry. I don't take medications except vitamins. I read every morning currently a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt. I do the Seattle Times crossword, usually finish before lunch." Rachel tensed beside me. "I retired 13 years ago. After my husband died, I made a conscious choice to slow down, focus on family, to trust the people I love." Gerald watched me intently, his pen motionless. "Any difficulty with stairs or getting around?" "None." "Mr. Thompson." Rachel interrupted, an edge in her voice. "You should know Mom left the stove on twice last week, didn't you?" "Helen, I did no such thing." "You did, Mom," Daniel said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "You just don't remember." Gerald looked between us, something shifting in his expression. "Mrs. Morrison, when you contacted Elder Services," he addressed Rachel directly, "you mentioned medical documentation, doctor's notes, prescriptions. Could I see those?" Rachel's smile faltered. "Oh, I thought I'd brought them down. They must be in the study." She disappeared upstairs. The silence felt thick. Gerald moved slowly around the room, making notes. His eyes landed on family photos, the spotless kitchen, organized bookshelves. Then he saw the mantel and froze. An old photograph in a tarnished silver frame, two women in their late 20s, laughing in front of the Space Needle. 1984. One was me. The other was Linda Thompson, my best friend before everything fell apart. Linda, who died 6 months after I moved away. Linda, whose funeral I'd missed. Gerald stared at that photograph like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale. "Mr. Thompson," I asked softly, "are you all right?" He tore his gaze away. "That photograph, the woman with you, that's Linda Thompson." "Yes. She was my best friend. We lost touch when I moved for work, and then—" My voice caught. Then she was gone. She was my mother. The words hung between us. Rachel's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Gerald straightened his professional mask, sliding back, but his hands shook worse than ever. "I can't find those papers," Rachel said, flustered. "I must have left them at Dr. Patterson's office, but I can get them to you this week." "That won't be necessary," Gerald said tightly. He was looking at the coffee table where glossy nursing home brochures were spread out, all neatly bookmarked. Too neat, too convenient. "Mrs. Morrison doesn't require placement services, but the dementia diagnosis, there is no diagnosis." Gerald's words cut sharp. "I've spent 30 minutes with Mrs. Morrison and she doesn't exhibit any signs of cognitive decline. She's one of the most capable clients I've assessed." He turned to Rachel, eyes hard. "Seattle Elder Services requires medical documentation before recommending facility placement. Without a legitimate diagnosis from a licensed physician, there's nothing I can do here." Rachel flushed. "I'm concerned about my mother-in-law's well-being, and I appreciate that concern, but Mrs. Morrison clearly doesn't need intervention." He gathered his papers, moving toward the door. "Mrs. Morrison, if you ever need legitimate services, meal delivery, transportation, please call Elder Services." I walked him to the door, ignoring Rachel's attempt to intercede. On the porch, Gerald paused and pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything," he said, voice low and urgent, "call me directly." As he handed me the card, his other hand brushed my purse hanging on the coat rack. The movement was subtle, quick. Something small and folded slipped into the outer pocket. Then he was walking down the steps toward his car. I watched him reach his sedan. Before opening the door, he turned back, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. It wasn't professional courtesy. It was warning. It was fear. "What did he say?" Rachel asked sharply beside me. "Nothing, just that I'm perfectly fine." But I barely heard her. Through the window, I watched Gerald Thompson's car disappear down the tree-lined street. The son of Linda Thompson. Linda, who I'd tried desperately to save 40 years ago, had just walked out of my house after recognizing me, and he'd left something in my purse. My hands shook as I closed the door. Rachel was talking about calling a different agency. Daniel nodded along, avoiding my eyes. Inside my purse, hidden in the outer pocket, was a piece of paper I hadn't put there. I didn't know what it said yet, but Gerald Thompson's frightened eyes and his mother's photograph on my mantel told me everything I needed to know. Whatever was written on that note, it was going to change my life forever. I found the piece of paper on the back seat of the taxi, and my hands trembled so violently I could barely unfold it. The afternoon rain had turned Seattle's streets into a blur of gray and silver. I'd been fumbling in my purse for my wallet to pay the fare when my fingers brushed against something that hadn't been there this morning, a small square of paper folded tight. The yellow cab rolled smoothly down Pike Street, the driver's eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. I pulled the paper out, and as I unfolded it, the world seemed to tilt. "Mrs. Morrison, don't go home. Your son and daughter-in-law are planning to have you declared incompetent. I saw documents in your living room. Please find help immediately. Gerald T., social worker, King County Health Services, extension 4127. I read it once, twice, 3 times. The letters swam before my eyes, but the message remained brutally clear. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The taxi's heater hummed softly, but I felt ice spreading through my veins. "Ma'am, you okay back there?" The driver's voice cut through my shock. I looked up and met his eyes in the mirror. Middle-aged, concerned his badge reading Mike J. "I'm fine," I managed, though my voice sounded far away. "Just unexpected news." He nodded slowly, unconvinced, and returned his attention to the road. I pressed the note against my lap, smoothing the creases with shaking fingers. Outside the window, Elliott Bay stretched gray and endless beneath the low clouds. Everything suddenly looked unfamiliar, as if I were seeing this city, my city, for the first time. Gerald Thompson, The name pulled at something deep in my memory. I closed my eyes and let myself fall backward through time. Gerald T. Linda. Linda Thompson. My closest friend from 1983 to 1994, a social work student with fierce ideals and a laugh that could light up a room. She'd gotten pregnant in 1990, unmarried, determined to keep the baby. A boy. She'd named him Gerald. Linda died in a car accident in 1994. I'd gone to the funeral, held her mother's hand, promised to stay in touch with the boy. But life had swept me away, my FBI career, my own family, the relentless current of years. I'd lost track of him, and now he'd found me. He remembered me. After 30 years, Linda's son had walked into my home this morning, watched my son and daughter-in-law try to manipulate him, and risked his career to warn me. Gratitude and grief hit me in equal measure, but beneath them, both something sharper urgency. I forced myself to think. The trembling in my hands began to slow as a different part of my brain, the part I'd trained for 27 years at the FB, I clicked into place. Don't panic. Analyze. Gather evidence. Build a case. What documents had Gerald seen? A power of attorney, form medical assessments declaring me unfit. A guardianship petition, I thought back to this morning's visit, replaying every moment. Rachel's nervousness when Gerald asked his questions. Daniel hovering near the doorway watching. The way they'd both tensed when Gerald mentioned my living situation. And before that, the past month. Brochures for senior living communities appearing on the kitchen counter. Rachel's sudden interest in my daily routine. Daniel's questions about my finances, casual but persistent. Mom, do you remember where you put the title to the house, just in case you know for emergencies? I'd thought they were being thoughtful, caring. I'd been so blind. What documents? I whispered to myself. The taxi turned onto Queen Anne Avenue, climbing the hill toward my neighborhood, toward my house, toward Daniel and Rachel. Don't go home, the note said. But if I didn't go home, what then? They'd realize I knew. They'd move faster, file whatever paperwork they'd prepared, spin some story to the courts about a confused old woman who'd wandered off. By the time I found a lawyer, it might be too late. No, I needed proof. I needed to see those documents myself. I needed to understand exactly what they were planning before I could fight back. I spent 27 years reading financial crimes, tracing paper trails that criminals thought they'd buried. I could read my own son's lies. Change of plans, I said, suddenly leaning forward. Take me home after all. Mike glanced at me in the mirror, his brow furrowed. You sure, ma'am? You looked pretty shaken a minute ago. I'm sure. My voice was steady now, cold and clear. 1247 Queen Anne Avenue North. He nodded and adjusted his route. I sat back, folding the note carefully and slipping it into my coat pocket. My heart was still racing, but my hands were steady. I knew what I had to do. The taxi pulled up to my Victorian house at 5:30. The porch light was already on, glowing warm against the gathering dusk. I paid Mike $18 cash exact change and walked to the front door with slow, measured steps. My key was in my purse, but I rang the doorbell instead. Normal. Calm. Nothing wrong. Rachel opened the door, surprise flashing across her face before she could mask it. Mom, I thought you'd be at the hotel by now. Interesting. By now. As if she'd been expecting me to stay away longer. I changed my mind, I said lightly, stepping inside. The room was lovely, but I missed my own bed. From the kitchen, Daniel's voice, "Oh, Mom's back." He appeared in the hallway, wiping his hands on a dish towel, his smile too bright, too quick. His eyes darted to Rachel for just a fraction of a second. I saw it. I cataloged it. I said nothing. Dinner was meatloaf, my recipe, the one I'd taught Rachel years ago. We sat at the table, the three of us, and made small talk. Rachel was overly attentive, refilling my water glass twice, asking how my afternoon had been, whether I'd had any trouble with the taxi. Not at all, I said. The driver was very kind. I didn't mention the note. I watched them instead the way I used to watch suspects across an interrogation table. Every micro-expression, every pause. We were worried, Daniel said, cutting his meatloaf into precise squares. You usually tell us your plans. I set down my fork and looked at him directly. I'm still allowed to go out, aren't I? Silence. Rachel's smile tightened. Of course, Mom. We just care about you." "I know you do," I said softly, and beneath the table my hands clenched into fists. Dinner ended at 7:15. I excused myself, "I'm tired, good night," and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. I closed the door, sat on the edge of my bed, and opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside was an old notebook, the kind I'd used during investigations. I hadn't touched it in years. I opened to a blank page and wrote, October 30th, 2024, Wednesday evening, Gerald Thompson warning. Documents. R&D expecting me away. Need to search Daniel's office tonight. At 9 o'clock, the house fell silent. I changed into dark sweatpants and soft slippers, the kind that wouldn't make a sound on the hardwood floors. I opened my bedroom door carefully, inch by inch, and stepped into the hallway. Below, I heard voices, faint, tense. I froze at the top of the stairs, my hand on the banister. Rachel's voice cut through the silence, sharp and urgent. "We can't wait any longer. If she found out—" Daniel interrupted, his tone low and fierce. "She won't. Tomorrow we file the petition. By Friday she'll be locked in Maplewood and the house will be ours." My knuckles turned white where I gripped the railing. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my mind was ice cold and perfectly clear. They're moving faster than I thought. I held my breath in the darkness at the top of the stairs, listening to my family plan my destruction. After I'd heard their conversation at 9 o'clock, "Tomorrow we file the petition. By Friday she'll be locked in Maplewood." I'd retreated to my bedroom and waited. I'd lain fully dressed on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. But I needed more. I needed details. I needed proof. At 2 in the morning, I heard movement below. The kitchen light clicked on, voices low and deliberate. I slipped out of bed, my phone already in my hand. I opened the voice recorder app, hit record, and tucked the phone into my cardigan pocket. Then I crept to the top of the stairs and sank into the shadows. From here, I could see a sliver of the kitchen, the edge of the table, Rachel's shoulder, Daniel's pacing silhouette. But mostly I could hear. "I don't understand why Thompson didn't just sign off." Daniel's voice was tight with frustration. "He's a social worker. His job is to rubber stamp these assessments." "He's not stupid," Rachel replied coolly. "He saw right through it. Your mother answered every question perfectly." A pause. Then Emily's voice, younger, sharper. "So what do we do now?" "We find someone more flexible." Rachel's tone didn't waver. "Dr. Kenneth Brennan owes me a favor. He'll sign whatever evaluation we need. We'll say she's been displaying memory lapses, confusion, paranoia. We file the guardianship petition tomorrow morning at the courthouse. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." My chest constricted. "Dr. Brennan." Rachel had mentioned him casually a few months ago, a colleague from her hospital volunteer work. I'd never met him. And now he was going to declare me incompetent. "What about the money?" Emily asked. "You promised I'd have enough for tuition and the baby. How much are we talking?" Rachel's voice turned businesslike. "The house is worth $580,000. After we clear the reverse mortgage—" "Wait, what reverse mortgage?" Emily's confusion mirrored my shock. Daniel cut in quickly. "Just a loan I took out last year. We'll pay it off when we sell." "You took out a loan against her house." Emily's voice rose. "Keep your voice down," Rachel hissed. "Yes, we needed the money. It's not relevant right now." My hand pressed against the wall to steady myself. A reverse mortgage. On my house. Without my knowledge. Forged. "After we clear the mortgage," Rachel continued, "we'll have about $230,000 from the house, plus her pension, $4,000 a month, and her savings accounts. Daniel found the statements last month. She's been hiding money." "How much?" Emily's voice was eager now. "Enough." Daniel sounded satisfied. "Once we have guardianship, we control everything. The pension gets deposited into an account we manage. The house sells within 6 months. And Mom goes to Maplewood. $5,000 a month, but Medicaid covers most of it after the first year." $5,000 a month. Emily's tone sharpened. "That's $60,000 a year. That cuts into my money." "Relax," Rachel said. "We're not keeping her there long term. Once the paperwork is settled and the assets are secured, we move to Plan B." Silence. My heart stopped. "What's Plan B?" Emily asked. Another pause. I could hear Daniel shifting his weight. "Not now," Rachel said quietly. "Let's just say, Maplewood has a reputation for inadequate care. Medication errors, falls. These things happen with elderly patients. The air in the stairwell turned to ice. Emily laughed a short, nervous sound. "You're saying—" "I'm saying we don't need to discuss details yet." Rachel's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "First, we get the guardianship. Then we assess our options." "Fine," Emily sounded mollified. "But I need the tuition money by September, and I'll need a car, something decent." "You'll have it," Daniel promised. "In 6 months, this will all be over." "God, I can't wait." Emily's voice turned petulant. "You know, Grandma bought me the ugliest sweater last Christmas, purple with cats on it. I had to smile and say thank you, and the whole time I wanted to scream. I swear once this is done, I'm burning every awful gift she ever gave me. That's my revenge." Daniel laughed, easy indulgent. "That's my girl." Rachel's voice carried amusement. "Let's focus. Daniel, you go to the courthouse at 8:30 tomorrow. I'll meet Dr. Brennan at 10. Emily, you stay here and keep Helen occupied if she wakes up early. Act normal." "What if Thompson told her something?" Emily asked. "He wouldn't. He'd lose his license. And even if he did so, she's nearly 70. Who's she going to call? She doesn't have a lawyer. She doesn't have friends. She's completely isolated. That's why this works." "You're right." Daniel moved toward the hallway. "Let's get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Chairs scraped, footsteps approached. I slid backward silent and slipped into my bedroom. I closed the door with infinite care, trembling hands, using both grips to turn the knob. I stood in the dark, back pressed against the door, and listened to them climb the stairs. Daniel's heavy tread, Rachel's lighter step. Emily's pause outside my door. I held my breath. Then she moved on. I waited 10 minutes, 20, until the house fell silent. Only then did I pull out my phone and stop the recording. 43 minutes, every word captured. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the saved file recording _October 30 _0200.m4a. Proof. But it wasn't the evidence that made my hands shake. It wasn't Rachel's icy efficiency or Daniel's debts or the reverse mortgage. It was Emily, my granddaughter. The girl I'd rocked to sleep, taught to bake cookies, driven to soccer practice every Saturday for 3 years. The girl who'd hugged me last Christmas and said, "I love it, Grandma, thank you so much," while holding that purple sweater. She'd been lying, planning this with them, laughing about burning my gifts. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from making a sound. When the tears came, I let them fall in silence. But underneath the grief, something else was growing, something cold and sharp. I had 43 minutes of audio. I had Gerald Thompson's warning. I had 27 years of FBI training. And I had until 8:30 tomorrow morning. I stood, walked to my closet, and pulled out my small duffel bag. I began packing clothes, medications, my laptop, documents from the safe cache from the envelope hidden in my hat box. When they woke up tomorrow, I would be gone. But before I left, I replayed the recording one more time. Rachel's voice cold and measured. "Once the paperwork is settled and the assets are secured, we move to Plan B." 3 words echoed in my mind over and over. Plan B. What did that mean? At 5 in the morning, I packed my entire life into a single suitcase. The house was still dark, still silent. Daniel and Rachel slept upstairs, Emily in the guest room down the hall. None of them knew I was awake. None of them knew I'd heard everything. I moved through my bedroom like a ghost, pulling clothes from drawers, medications from the bathroom cabinet, documents from the safe, hidden behind my bookshelf. My hands were steady now, steadier than they'd been in hours. The tears had dried. What remained was clarity. Gerald Thompson's warning echoed in my mind, "Don't go home." But I had gone home. I'd gathered evidence. And now, finally, I was running. I zipped the suitcase closed and reached for my duffel bag on the bed. That's when I saw it. Tucked in the corner of my closet behind the winter coats I rarely wore was a cardboard box I hadn't opened in years. The lid was dusty, the edges worn. My hand hesitated over the flap, then pulled it open. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper yellowed with age, was a pair of tiny leather shoes. Baby shoes. Brown scuffed at the toes, the laces still tied in the careful double knots I'd taught myself to make. Size 4, for a 2-year-old boy. Daniel's shoes. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the shoes cradled in my palms. 41 years ago. The orphanage in Spokane, a cold November morning, a social worker leading me down a hallway lined with cribs. And there he was, a little boy with dark curls and enormous brown eyes, sitting alone in the corner of the playroom, clutching a stuffed rabbit. He doesn't talk much, the social worker had said. Trauma from his birth mother's abandonment. But he's healthy. He just needs someone to love him. I'd knelt down in front of him, and he'd looked at me with those eyes so solemn, so afraid. I'd held out my hand. "Hi, Daniel, my name is Helen. Would you like to come home with me?" He'd stared at my hand for a long time. Then slowly he'd reached out and placed his small fingers in mine. I'd promised him that day silently, fiercely, I will never let go. I will protect you. I will give you everything I have. And I had. I'd raised him alone after my husband died when Daniel was 7. I'd worked double shifts at the bureau to pay for his braces, his soccer camps, his college tuition. I'd sat with him through nightmares, celebrated every birthday, framed every report card. I'd loved him with everything I had. And now he was planning to have me declared incompetent, lock me in a nursing home, and steal everything I'd saved. The irony crashed over me like a wave. I pressed the tiny shoes against my chest and bent forward, a sob tearing from my throat before I could stop it. I raised a stranger. I sat there in the dark, clutching those shoes, and let myself break. But only for a moment. At 5:30, I wiped my face, wrapped the shoes carefully, and placed them in my duffel bag. Then I picked up my suitcase, walked downstairs, and left through the back door without looking back. The bank opened at 9. I was waiting outside when the manager unlocked the doors. Janet Williams, the teller who'd handled my accounts for the past 3 years, looked up in surprise as I approached her window. She was 35, efficient, always wore a name tag with a smiley face sticker. Mrs. Morrison. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" "I need to make a withdrawal," I said calmly. $5,000 cash. Her smile faltered slightly. "That's quite a bit. May I ask what it's for?" "Just for security purposes. Personal expenses." I met her eyes steadily. "Is there a problem?" "No, of course not." She glanced at her computer screen, typing quickly. "I'll just need to verify your account and prepare the cash. It may take a few minutes." "That's fine." While she worked, I asked her to pull up my other accounts. The offshore savings account I'd opened 12 years ago, quietly, without telling anyone. The investment portfolio I'd built through decades of careful planning. The pension fund Daniel didn't know existed. Everything was still there, untouched. $2.7 million in cash and securities. Every cent I'd saved from 27 years at the FB, I invested wisely, protected carefully. Daniel thought I was a foolish old woman with a modest pension and a house. He had no idea. "All your accounts are secure, Mrs. Morrison," Janet said, counting out 50 $100 bills with practiced efficiency. She slid them across the counter in a bank envelope. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, thank you, Janet." I walked out of the bank with $5,000 in my purse and the knowledge that my son had tried and failed to find my real money. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel rose above the street like a fortress, elegant and impenetrable. I checked in at 10:30, paying cash for a week in advance. Claire Anderson, the receptionist, was 42, composed her auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun. She processed my reservation without question, handed me a key card, and smiled warmly. "Suite 1012, Mrs. Morrison, 10th floor. Enjoy your stay. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call the front desk." "Thank you." The suite was beautiful, high ceilings, tall windows overlooking downtown Seattle, a king bed with crisp white linens. It smelled like lavender and safety. I set my suitcase down, locked the door, fastened the chain, and stood in the center of the room. For the first time in hours, maybe years, I was alone. Truly alone. I walked to the bed and sat down. Then I opened my duffel bag and pulled out the tiny brown shoes. The dam broke. I curled onto my side, clutching those shoes to my chest, and sobbed. Great wrenching sobs that tore through me, shaking my entire body. I cried for the little boy who'd held my hand in the orphanage. I cried for the 41 years I'd given him. I cried for the family I thought I had and the strangers they'd turned out to be. I cried until there was nothing left. When I finally sat up, my face swollen and my throat raw, it was nearly noon. The shoes lay on the pillow beside me, small and worn and heartbreaking. But I wasn't broken. I was angry. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. Then I picked up my phone. 37 missed calls, all from Daniel. I stared at his name on the screen at the frantic messages. Mom, where are you? Please call me back. We're worried. Lies, all of it. I powered off the phone, set it on the nightstand, and picked up the hotel phone instead. I dialed information. Yes, I need the number for Walsh & Partners, a law firm in Seattle. The operator connected me. A woman's voice answered. Walsh & Partners, how may I direct your call? Gimansenin, I need to speak with Richard Walsh. I said, my voice steady and cold. Tell him it's an emergency. Elder abuse and fraud. I have evidence and I need representation immediately. A pause. Then, 1 moment, please. I sat on the edge of the bed, the baby shoes still visible on the pillow, and waited. I'd run, I'd cried, I'd broken. Now it was time to fight. Richard Walsh's office occupied the entire 72nd floor of the Columbia Center, with views that made my problems feel impossibly small. But they weren't small, they were enormous. And as I sat across from him in that glass-walled conference room, the city of Seattle sprawling below us like a map of possibilities, I felt something I hadn't felt in days' hope. Richard was 56, silver-haired, with the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension, and when he shook my hand, his grip was firm and steady. Mrs. Morrison, he said, gesturing to a chair. You said this was an emergency. Elder abuse and fraud. Tell me everything. I did. I told him about Gerald Thompson's warning about the conversation I'd overheard at 9 o'clock about the kitchen meeting at 2 in the morning. I told him about Daniel's debts, Rachel's cold calculations, Emily's cruelty. I told him about the guardianship petition they planned to file about Maplewood Nursing Home about Plan B, and then I pulled out my phone and played the recording. 43 minutes, every word. Richard listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. When Rachel's voice said, Maplewood has a reputation for inadequate care, medication errors, falls. These things happen with elderly patients. His jaw tightened visibly. When the recording ended, he sat back in his chair and exhaled slowly. Mrs. Morrison, he said quietly, this is elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, financial exploitation, and possibly, he paused, choosing his words carefully, conspiracy to commit something much worse, murder, I said flatly. Plan B, that's what they meant, isn't it? I believe so, but we'll need more evidence to prove intent. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. This recording is excellent. It gives us leverage, but we need to move fast. If they've already filed that guardianship petition, they haven't. I checked my watch. It's 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon. They planned to file yesterday morning at 8:30, but I left before they woke up. By now, they know I'm gone. They're panicking. Richard's eyes gleamed with something like admiration. You bought yourself time. Smart. How much cash do you have access to? $5,000 in hand. $2.7 million in offshore accounts and investments. He blinked. Then a slow smile spread across his face. They have no idea, do they? None. Good, that's leverage. He opened his laptop and began typing rapidly. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing for an emergency restraining order against your son and daughter-in-law. That prevents them from accessing your property, your accounts, or coming near you. Second, we're freezing all joint accounts and filing a fraud report with the bank regarding the reverse mortgage. Third, we're documenting everything, every threat, every lie, every forged signature. What about the guardianship petition? I asked. If they file it, they won't get far. We'll present your recording, your medical records showing you're perfectly competent, and testimony from Gerald Thompson. Any judge will see through their scheme immediately. He paused. But we need more. We need to know everything they've done. Every debt, every lie, every crime. That's where Marcus comes in. Marcus. As if on cue, the conference room door opened. The man who entered was 45, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and gray eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He wore jeans, a black jacket, and moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who knew how to go unnoticed. Mrs. Morrison. Richard said, This is Marcus Webb. best private investigator in Seattle. Marcus, this is Helen Morrison. I want you to dig into her son and daughter-in-law. Everything. Financials, communications, relationships, secrets. I want to know what they had for breakfast and who they're sleeping with." Marcus nodded, once his expression unreadable. He pulled out a small notebook and a pen. Names: Daniel Morrison, 43. Rachel Morrison, 38. Daughter Emily Morrison, 19, pregnant. I rattled off their addresses, phone numbers, workplace details, everything I could remember. Marcus wrote quickly, his handwriting sharp and precise. "You mentioned debts. How much?" Daniel admitted to gambling. "I don't know the amount. He took out a reverse mortgage on my house, $348,000 without my knowledge. The signature was forged." Marcus looked up sharply. "Forged? How that requires notarization, bank approval, counseling sessions. That's not a one-person job." "Exactly," Richard said. "Which means there's a conspiracy. Marcus, I want you to find out who helped him. Bank employees, notaries, anyone who touched that paperwork. On it." Marcus turned to me. "Mrs. Morrison, I'll need access to your financial records, any documents you have from the house, and permission to surveil your family. Is that acceptable?" "So, yes." My voice was steady. "Whatever it takes." "Good, I'll start immediately. I'll have a preliminary report by tomorrow morning." He pocketed his notebook and headed for the door. Then he paused and looked back at me. "Ma'am, for what it's worth, they made a mistake. They thought you were an easy target. They were wrong." The door closed behind him. Richard smiled faintly. "Marcus doesn't give compliments lightly. He's already impressed." "I haven't done anything yet." "You escaped. You gathered evidence. You secured your assets and hired the best legal team in the city, all within 24 hours. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Mrs. Morrison, who are you really? Because this level of strategic thinking isn't typical for someone in your situation." I met his eyes. "I worked for the FBI for 27 years. Financial Crimes Division. I built cases against white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable." Understanding dawned across his face. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." "No," I said quietly. "They don't." Richard stood and extended his hand again. "Then let's make sure they find out. I'll file the restraining order and fraud report today. Marcus will start surveillance tonight. In the meantime, stay at the Fairmont, keep your phone off, and don't contact them under any circumstances. Let them panic. Let them make mistakes. What if they try to file the guardianship petition anyway? Let them try. We'll be waiting." His smile turned cold. "Mrs. Morrison, they underestimated you. That was their first mistake, and it's going to cost them everything." I shook his hand, feeling something fierce and bright unfold in my chest. I wasn't running anymore. I was building an army. I returned to the Fairmont as the sun set over Elliott Bay, the sky streaked with orange and purple. Suite 1012 felt less like a refuge now and more like a command center. I ordered room service salmon roasted vegetables, a glass of wine I barely touched, and sat by the window watching the city lights blink on one by one. My phone, still powered off, sat on the nightstand like a small black bomb. I didn't turn it on. At 8 o'clock the next morning, day 4, my hotel phone rang. "Mrs. Morrison, it's Marcus Webb. I have your preliminary report. Your daughter-in-law is having an affair, and that's just the beginning." Each day, Marcus's reports peeled back another layer of lies I'd been living in. It started on Friday morning, day 3, when he arrived at my suite with a manila folder thick with documents. He sat across from me at the small table by the window, his expression carefully neutral, and opened the file. "Mrs. Morrison," he said quietly, "I'm going to walk you through what I've found. Some of this will be difficult to hear. Are you ready?" I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands steady. "Tell me everything." He nodded and pulled out the first set of papers. "Credit cards, 5 of them all in your name. Total debt, $37,000. I stared at the statements. Chase, American Express, Discover, Capital One, Nordstrom. I'd never applied for any of them. "The signatures are forged," Marcus continued. "Your son opened these accounts over the past 18 months. The charges are mostly your daughter-in-law's clothing, jewelry, spa treatments, furniture, high-end purchases. She's been living well on your credit. $37,000. I'd been paying for Rachel's designer handbags while she planned to lock me away. There's more, Marcus said. He slid another document across the table. Your son's employment records. Daniel was terminated from his position at Evergreen Financial 8 months ago. 'Cause embezzlement suspicion, though, no charges were filed. He signed a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for a quiet exit. 8 months. He'd been lying to me for 8 months, leaving the house every morning in a suit, coming home at 6 o'clock, as if he'd been at work all day. Where was he going? I asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. Casinos, mostly. Emerald Queen and Tacoma Snoqualmie Casino. He has a gambling problem, Mrs. Morrison. A serious one. I contacted some of my sources. He paused. He owes $125,000 to a loan shark operation. They've been pressuring him for payment, threatening him. $125,000. My hands began to shake. I set down the coffee cup before I spilled it. That's why they need your money, Marcus said gently. It's not just greed, it's desperation. They're drowning. On Saturday, he brought photographs. Rachel entering a house 3 blocks from mine. A man answering the door, tall, mid-40s, dark hair graying at the temples. They kissed on the doorstep. Scott Henderson, Marcus said, 46 years old, married 2 kids, lives on Maple Street with his wife, Susan. He and Rachel have been involved for approximately 2 years. The affair is ongoing. She visits his house when his wife is at work Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually between 10 and noon. I stared at the photograph. Scott Henderson. I knew that name. I'd met him at a neighborhood barbecue 2 summers ago. He'd shaken my hand, complimented my potato salad, introduced me to his children. And for 2 years, he'd been sleeping with my daughter-in-law. Does Daniel know? I asked. Marcus hesitated. I don't believe so, but I'm still investigating. On Sunday, Marcus didn't come. Instead, my hotel phone rang. Mrs. Morrison, I'm reviewing your phone records. His voice was brisk, professional. Your son has called your cell phone 37 times since Thursday morning. The voicemails are escalating. I recommend you listen to them. They may constitute evidence of harassment and coercion. I retrieved my phone from the nightstand drawer where I'd kept it powered off. I turned it on my heart pounding and accessed the voicemail inbox. 37 messages. I listened to them in order. Message 1, Thursday, 9:15 a.m. Mom, where are you? We're really worried. Please call us back. Message 8, Thursday, 2 p.m. Mom, this isn't funny. You need to come home. We can talk about whatever's bothering you. Message 15, Friday, 10:30 a.m. Mom, you're scaring us. If you don't respond soon, we're going to have to call the police and report you as a vulnerable adult. Message 22, Saturday, 8 p.m. You're being incredibly selfish. Do you have any idea what you're putting us through? Emily is pregnant and stressed, and you're making everything worse. Message 27, Sunday, 11 a.m. Mom, if you don't come home, we're going to have no choice but to take legal measures to protect you from yourself. Your actions are forcing our hand. I stopped the playback, my chest tight. Protect you from yourself. The gaslighting was masterful. If I hadn't heard the kitchen conversation, if I didn't have the recording, I might have believed him. I might have thought I was the problem. But I knew the truth. I saved every voicemail and forwarded them to Richard Walsh. On Monday, Marcus returned with more documents. Bank records, tax filings, phone logs. Your daughter-in-law made 14 calls to a divorce attorney last month, he said. She's been planning to leave Daniel, but not until after they secured your assets. On Tuesday, I sat in the suite and watched the rain streak down the windows, each revelation settling over me like stones. $37,000 in forged credit cards. 8 months of unemployment lies. $125,000 in gambling debts. 2 years of infidelity. 37 desperate phone calls. Layer after layer after layer. And Marcus had said on that first day, there's more. Now on day 7, he sat across from me again, that same manila folder in his hands, and his expression was graver than I'd ever seen it. Mrs. Morrison, he said quietly, we need to talk about something else I found. About your house. I looked up sharply. What about my house? He opened the folder and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Loan documents, signatures, notary stamps. The reverse mortgage, he said. I traced the paperwork. It wasn't just your son who forged your signature. There were 4 people involved in this fraud. A bank employee, a loan officer, a notary, and Daniel. 4 people. A conspiracy. This wasn't desperation. Marcus said, his voice hard. This was coordinated, premeditated. They planned this months in advance. I stared at the documents, my mind racing. The reverse mortgage. $348,000 stolen from my home equity through forgery, bribery, and criminal conspiracy. Who? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Who helped him? Marcus met my eyes. I'm still identifying all the players. But Mrs. Morrison, this goes deeper than your family. There's a network, and I think... He paused. I think the loan sharks are connected to it. My blood turned to ice. There's more, he said again. A lot more. And we're only just beginning to uncover it. I hadn't looked at myself, really looked in years. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. Gray hair pulled into a practical bun. No makeup. A beige cardigan I'd owned since Daniel was in high school. Sensible shoes. Invisible clothes for an invisible woman. I dressed for other people my entire life. For my husband before he died. For my son. For my daughter-in-law. For a family that had stopped seeing me years ago. But today, on day 8, I decided to dress for myself. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in Suite 1012, studying my reflection. 68 years old, gray roots, tired eyes, shoulders that carried the weight of 4 decades of sacrifice. No more. I picked up the hotel phone and called the concierge. I need a recommendation for the best salon in Seattle. Price is not a concern. Allure Salon and Spa occupied the ground floor of a sleek building on Fifth Avenue, all glass and marble and soft lighting. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile and led me to a chair by the window. Mrs. Morrison, Vanessa will be with you in just a moment. Vanessa Price appeared a few minutes later, 29 petite with platinum blonde hair cut in a sharp bob and bright green eyes that seemed to see everything. Mrs. Morrison. She shook my hand enthusiastically. I hear you're looking for a transformation. Tell me, what are we thinking? I hesitated. I don't know. I haven't changed my hair in 20 years. Her eyes lit up. Then we're overdue. Let's start fresh. Do you trust me? I met her gaze in the mirror. Yes. Good. She ran her fingers through my hair, assessing. Let's cut it to shoulder length, softer, more modern. We'll add some highlights to blend the gray, give you dimension. And we'll style it with movement, not severity. You have beautiful bone structure. Let's show it off. For the next 2 hours, Vanessa worked with the focus of an artist. She talked as she cut and colored, asking me gentle questions about my life, never prying, just creating space for me to speak if I wanted to. Self-care isn't selfish, she said as she applied foils to my hair. It's survival. When you take care of yourself, you're telling the world and yourself that you matter. I watched in the mirror as she transformed me piece by piece. When she finished, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My hair fell in soft waves just past my shoulders, silver mixed with subtle honey tones that caught the light. My face looked younger, brighter. Vanessa had applied light makeup, mascara, a touch of blush, a nude lipstick that made me look polished but natural. There, she said softly, that's you. I touched my hair, my hand trembling slightly. I look alive, Vanessa finished. You look alive. From the salon, I walked to Nordstrom. I hadn't shopped for myself, really shopped, not just replacing worn-out basics in years. I moved through the racks, slowly running my fingers over fabrics. Silk, cashmere, wool crepe. I tried on dresses I never would have considered before. A black sheath dress, elegant and simple, that made me look powerful. A deep red wrap dress that brought color to my cheeks. An emerald green blouse that matched Vanessa's eyes and made my own blue eyes stand out. I bought all 3, and heels, and a leather handbag that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. When the saleswoman handed me the shopping bags, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. This is what freedom feels like. By 6 o'clock, I was back at the Fairmont, sitting in the hotel restaurant with a glass of wine and a plate of seared scallops I barely tasted. I wore the black dress. My new hair fell softly around my face. I felt like a different person. My phone, still powered off, sat on the table beside me. I picked it up, turned it on, and waited. Within 30 seconds, it began to ring. Daniel. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered, "Hello, Daniel." Silence. Then cautiously, "Mom." "Yes. Mom, where the hell have you been?" His voice cracked with a mixture of relief and anger. "Do you have any idea we've been out of our minds? We almost called the police, but you didn't," I said calmly, "because filing a missing persons report would require you to admit I'm not incompetent, and that would make your guardianship petition rather difficult, wouldn't it?" Another silence, longer this time. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said finally, but his voice wavered. "Yes, you do. I know about the credit cards, Daniel, all 5 of them. $37,000 in debt forged in my name. I know you were fired 8 months ago. I know about the gambling. The $125,000 you owed to loan sharks. I know about the reverse mortgage you took out on my house without my knowledge. Mom," his voice rose panicked now, "Mom, you need to calm down. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I have recordings of you and Rachel planning to have me declared incompetent and locked in a nursing home. I have evidence of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. And I have a lawyer, a very good one. You don't understand." His tone shifted, became pleading. "We were trying to help you. We were worried. You were worried about your debts," I said coldly. "Not about me. I've hired a private investigator, Daniel. He's been following you, following Rachel. I know everything. The casinos, the loan sharks, the affair." A sharp intake of breath. "What affair?" Interesting. He really didn't know. "Ask your wife," I said, "or don't. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I'm done. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being your excuse. And I'm done being your victim." "Mom, please." His voice broke. "You need help. You're not thinking straight. Let us come talk to you." "No. The next time you see me will be in court. My lawyer is filing a restraining order and fraud charges tomorrow. You're not to contact me, come near me, or access any of my accounts. If you try, you'll be arrested." "You can't do this," he said, desperation creeping in. "We're your family. You stopped being my family the moment you planned to destroy me." My voice was steady cold. "Goodbye, Daniel." "Mom, wait." I hung up. For a moment, I sat there, the phone still in my hand, my heart racing. I just hung up on my son for the first time in 41 years, and it felt like freedom. I set the phone down, picked up my wine glass, and took a slow sip. Across the restaurant, I caught my reflection in the window, the elegant dress, the new hair, the woman who'd finally stopped disappearing. I smiled. Tomorrow, Richard would file the restraining order. Marcus would continue investigating. The legal battle would begin in earnest. But tonight, I'd won something more important. I'd reclaimed myself. Marcus walked into the suite with a file folder so thick it could barely close. "You need to sit down for this." I was already sitting, coffee cup in hand, watching the rain streak down the windows of Suite 1012. It was day 10, nearly 2 weeks since I'd escaped my own home, and Marcus's expression told me the nightmare wasn't over. It was deepening. He set the folder on the table between us and opened it, revealing stacks of documents, photographs, bank statements, screenshots. "Your family is panicking," he said without preamble, "and when people panic, they make mistakes. A lot of them." I set down my coffee. "Show me." He pulled out the first document. "Monday morning, 2 hours after you hung up on Daniel, he went to your bank, attempted to access your accounts, claimed he had power of attorney and needed to withdraw funds for your medical care. He doesn't have power of attorney. The bank knows that. They denied him. But here's where it gets interesting." Marcus slid a printed email across the table. "Daniel then filed a complaint with the bank claiming you're suffering from mental decline and paranoid delusions. He told them you've been making irrational decisions and that the family is trying to protect you from financial exploitation." I stared at the email, my chest tightening. The gaslighting had gone public. "The bank flagged his complaint as suspicious," Marcus continued, "especially after Richard filed the fraud report about the reverse mortgage. They're cooperating with us now. But Daniel's building a narrative. He's telling everyone you're incompetent." "What else?" Marcus pulled out a series of photographs. "Your daughter-in-law has been selling your belongings, online and in person." The photos showed Rachel at a pawn shop on Capitol Hill carrying a velvet jewelry box. Another showed her loading furniture into a rental truck. A third was a screenshot from an online marketplace my grandmother's mahogany side table listed for $800. "She's liquidating your assets," Marcus said flatly. "Furniture, jewelry, silverware. She tried to pawn your grandmother's emerald ring yesterday. The shop refused because she couldn't produce documentation proving ownership. My grandmother's ring, the one I'd planned to give Emily someday. She's stealing from me," I said quietly. "While I'm still alive." "Yes, and it gets worse." He pulled out another document, a screenshot of a crowdfunding page. "Your granddaughter set this up 3 days ago." I read the page header, "Help Emily support her ailing grandmother." The description read, "My grandmother, Helen, is suffering from severe health issues and mounting medical bills. Our family is struggling to cover her care costs while she battles dementia and related complications. Any contribution helps. Please share. Goal $15,000. Amount raised so far $3,200. I felt the blood drain from my face. She's lying. She's telling people I have dementia and asking for money. Fraud, Marcus said grimly. She's defrauding her own social network, friends, classmates, people who trust her. I've documented 23 donations so far, all from people who believe they're helping you. I pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to process the scale of the deception. They're accelerating, Marcus said, his voice hard. They know you're gone. They know you have a lawyer. They're trying to grab whatever they can before the legal system catches up. And they're building a public story that you're mentally ill, that they're the victims, that they're trying to help you. Can we stop them? Richard's already on it. He's filing an emergency motion to freeze all joint assets and prevent the sale of any property from your home. He's also reporting Emily's crowdfunding page for fraud. But Mrs. Morrison... Marcus leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. They're getting desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. I met his gaze. What do you mean? Daniel's gambling debts are crushing him. The loan sharks are circling. Rachel's affair is ongoing. Emily needs money for the baby. They're trapped. He paused. And you're the only thing standing between them and financial ruin. That's why I'm concerned they might escalate. Escalate how? I don't know yet, but I want you to stay in this hotel, keep security informed of your location, and don't go anywhere alone. Understand? I nodded slowly, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Marcus pulled out more documents, phone logs, credit card statements, surveillance photos, and walked me through each one methodically. Daniel had called me 62 times in the past 3 days. Rachel had attempted to use one of the forged credit cards yesterday and been declined. Emily had posted on social media about her sick grandmother and received an outpouring of sympathy. It was a coordinated campaign, a castle built on lies crumbling as I pulled away the foundation. There's something else, Marcus said, his tone shifting. I looked up. What? He hesitated, then pulled out a thick stack of papers clipped together. Legal documents, property records, mortgage filings. Your house, Mrs. Morrison. There's something very wrong with your house. The reverse mortgage, I said. We already know about that. It's not just the reverse mortgage. Marcus spread the documents across the table. I traced the paperwork. The loan was processed 14 months ago, October 2023. But here's the problem. The signature on the application isn't just forged. The entire process was fraudulent. Someone impersonated you at the bank, in person. I stared at him. What? Reverse mortgages require face-to-face counseling, a notarized signature, and a bank meeting. You have to be physically present, but you weren't. Someone else was. I'm still identifying her, but she used your name, your social security number, your date of birth. She met with a loan officer, got approvals, and walked out with a massive loan against your home equity. My hands gripped the table edge. How is that even possible? Professional impersonation, makeup, prosthetics, forged documents, and inside help a corrupt loan officer named Kenneth Brennan, the same doctor. Brennan, your daughter-in-law mentioned in the kitchen recording. Marcus slid forward more documents. Plus a notary named David Foster and a bank employee named Diane Cruz. 4 names, 4 people who'd conspired to steal from my home. This isn't just your family, Mrs. Morrison, Marcus said quietly. This is organized fraud, a network, and it goes deeper than I initially thought. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it pressing down on me. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd recruited accomplices, built a criminal enterprise around stealing my life. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his voice low, about the house itself. What about it? He pulled out a final document, a property assessment city record zoning maps. Mrs. Morrison, your house sits on historically protected land, and there's been a development offer, a big one. I think that's why they wanted you gone. I looked at the numbers on the page, my vision blurring. How much? I whispered. Marcus met my eyes. $2.8 million. You have a reverse mortgage on your house, Marcus said. $320,000, only you never applied for it. I stared at the documents spread across the table in Suite 1012, loan applications, signatures that looked like mine but weren't, notarized forms. Bank approvals dated October 2023, 14 months ago. The current debt is $348,000. Marcus continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. With interest and fees, it's been accumulating for over a year, and Mrs. Morrison, this wasn't a simple forgery. This was a coordinated conspiracy. Richard Walsh sat beside me, his silver hair catching the afternoon light. He'd come straight from a court hearing, still in his charcoal suit, and his expression was grim. How many people? Richard asked. Marcus pulled out 4 photographs and laid them in a row. 4 conspirators. Daniel Morrison, your son the orchestrator. Diane Cruz, 67, a retired bank employee who impersonated you. She wore professional makeup, a wig, and aging prosthetics to pass as you during the required in-person bank meeting and counseling session. I looked at the photo. An older woman with gray hair and glasses, her face lined in a way that could pass for mine from a distance. Thomas Brennan. Marcus continued, sliding forward the next photo. Corrupt loan officer. He approved the fraudulent application, bypassed standard verification procedures, and processed the loan. He was arrested yesterday. He's cooperating with the FBI now. My chest tightened. The FBI. Alan Foster. Marcus said, pointing to the third photo. Corrupt notary. He witnessed and stamped the forged signature. And finally, your son, who orchestrated the entire operation. They used a P.O. box to receive all correspondence so you'd never see the paperwork. Richard leaned forward, his jaw tight. How did they think they'd get away with this? They were counting on Helen being declared incompetent, Marcus said flatly. Once they had guardianship, they'd control all her assets, sell the house, pay off the reverse mortgage, and pocket the difference. No one would question it. Richard turned to me, his sharp eyes narrowing. Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, how did you not notice reverse mortgages generate paperwork, statements, tax documents? How did this stay hidden for 14 months? The question hung in the air. I'd been waiting for someone to ask it, dreading it. I took a slow breath, because I chose not to see it. Richard frowned. I don't understand. I was trained to see it, I said quietly. For 27 years, I was an FBI financial crimes analyst. I built cases against white-collar criminals, embezzlers, fraudsters, money launderers. I could trace a paper trail through a dozen shell corporations. I could spot a forged signature from across a room. Marcus's eyes widened. Richard went very still. But 13 years ago. I continued, my voice steady. My husband died, and I was alone. Daniel was all I had left, so I made a choice. I turned off my instincts. I chose to trust him. I chose to believe he was the man I'd raised, not the stranger he'd become. You had a blind spot, Richard said slowly. I created one. Deliberately. I looked down at my hands. Daniel knew how to exploit it. He built an elaborate facade, a virtual office so convincing I never questioned it. A fake LinkedIn profile with fake colleagues, actors probably, or AI-generated images. He left the house every morning in a suit, came home at 6. He talked about meetings, projects, office politics. He was meticulous. Marcus let out a long breath. You're telling me your son ran a 3-year con on a retired FBI analyst? Yes. Richard leaned back in his chair, something like awe crossing his face. Mrs. Morrison, do you understand what this means? Your son committed financial fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy against a federal agent, even a retired one. That elevates every charge. The FBI will take this case personally. I know. And you, Richard's voice shifted, sharpening with strategy. You have 27 years of experience building financial crime cases. You know how to dismantle them. You know their playbook because you wrote it. I met his eyes. Yes. Marcus looked at me with something close to respect. Thomas Brennan is cooperating. He's already given us Diane Cruz's name and location. We have a warrant out for her arrest. Alan Foster is under investigation. The conspiracy is unraveling. But Mrs. Morrison, with your background, you know what we need to do next. We go public, I said. Richard smiled a cold, sharp smile. Exactly. We file charges. I continued, my voice gaining strength. Federal fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, elder abuse. We present the recordings, the evidence, the testimony. We make this case airtight. And we make it visible. Your son wanted to declare you incompetent, Richard said. Let's show the world exactly how competent you are. Marcus closed the file folder and stood. I'll coordinate with the FBI. With your background, they'll fast-track this. Brennan's cooperation gives us the paper trail. We'll have arrests within the week. I stood as well, feeling something fierce settle in my chest. For 13 years, I'd been hiding from who I was, a federal analyst, a strategist, a woman who'd spent nearly 3 decades dismantling criminals exactly like my son. No more hiding. There's one more thing, I said. Marcus and Richard both looked at me. I want to confront them. Not in court, not yet. I want them to see me, to understand who they tried to destroy. I paused. We're going public, loudly. Richard's smile widened. What did you have in mind? I thought of the recordings, the evidence, the photographs, the 27 years of training Daniel had forgotten I possessed. I'm going to tell my story, I said, and I'm going to make sure everyone hears it. Marcus nodded slowly. With your FBI background, this becomes a national case. Media will cover it. Your son forged documents to steal from a retired federal agent who spent her career prosecuting exactly this kind of crime. That's a headline. Good, I said coldly. Let it be a headline. Let the world see what he did. Let them see who I am. Richard extended his hand. Mrs. Morrison, your son, forged documents to steal from a federal agent. He chose the wrong mother. I shook his hand, my grip firm. Yes, I said. He did. Marcus picked up his folder. With your FB, I passed you know what we need to do next. I met his eyes. Yes, we go public, spectacularly. Before I reveal the confrontation at the real estate office, comment 1, if you believe I exposed them publicly, or 2, if they got away. I need to know you're listening. Quick note, what follows includes dramatized elements for storytelling. If that's not for you, feel free to stop here. The receptionist at Miller Premier Properties had no idea she was about to witness the destruction of a family. It was Monday morning, day 14, and the real estate office in Bellevue gleamed with polished marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Washington. I sat in the waiting area dressed in my emerald green blouse and black slacks, my new haircut falling softly around my face. I looked like any other wealthy client browsing luxury listings. Andrew Miller, the broker, had been showing me waterfront properties for the past half hour. 48 years old, sharp suit, easy smile. He had no idea who I was or why I was really here. Mrs. Morrison, he said, returning with a folder of listings. I think you'll love this estate in Medina. 5 bedrooms, private dock, stunning views. The front door opened. Daniel walked in first, followed by Rachel and Emily. They were dressed formally, Daniel in a navy suit, Rachel in a cream blazer, Emily in a maternity dress that emphasized her pregnancy. They looked like a respectable family handling difficult business. They hadn't seen me yet. I stood up slowly, setting down my coffee cup. Andrew turned toward them with his professional smile. Good morning. How can I help you today? Daniel stepped forward, his voice confident. We have an appointment. We need to discuss listing a property. My mother's house, she's asked us to handle the sale on her behalf due to her declining health. I took a single step forward into the light. Hello, everyone. 3 heads snapped toward me in perfect synchrony. The color drained from Daniel's face. Rachel's mouth fell open. Emily actually stumbled backward, her hand flying to her stomach. Mom, Daniel's voice cracked. What are you doing here? I finished calmly. "Stopping you from committing real estate fraud, apparently." Andrew looked between us, confusion spreading across his face. "I'm sorry, is there a problem?" "Yes," I said, turning to him with a polite smile. "Mr. Miller, my name is Helen Morrison. This is my son, Daniel, my daughter-in-law, Rachel, and my granddaughter, Emily. And they're about to claim they have legal authority to sell my house. They don't." "Mom, you don't understand," Daniel started. "I understand perfectly." My voice cut through the office like a blade. "You're here to forge documents claiming power of attorney or guardianship so you can sell my house without my consent. Except I'm standing right here, perfectly competent, perfectly aware, and perfectly ready to press charges." Rachel found her voice attempting damage control. "Helen, you're confused. We've been worried sick. You disappeared without telling us." "I left," I corrected, "because I overheard you planning to have me declared incompetent and locked in a nursing home. I have recordings. Would you like to hear them?" Silence crashed through the office. The receptionist had stopped typing. 2 other agents had emerged from their offices, drawn by the tension. Andrew cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should—" "No." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the Bluetooth speaker on the reception desk. "Everyone should hear this." I pressed play. Rachel's voice filled the office cold and clear. "Once the paperwork is settled and the assets are secured, we move to Plan B. Daniel, in 6 months, this will all be over and we'll finally be able to breathe. Emily, I swear once this is done, I'm burning every awful gift she ever gave me." The 43-minute recording played for 3 minutes. Just enough. The kitchen conspiracy, the nursing home plan, the casual cruelty. When I stopped it, the silence was absolute. Andrew's face had gone pale. The receptionist stared at my family with horror. The other agents stood frozen in their doorways. "That," I said quietly, "is my son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter planning to destroy me in my own kitchen while I listened from the stairs." Daniel's hands were shaking. "Mom, that's taken out of context." "No, it's not." I turned to face them fully. "And here's what you don't know, what you never knew." I paused, letting the weight settle. "You don't know who I am, do you?" My voice cut through the silence. Daniel stared. "Mom, I spent 27 years at the FBI Financial Crimes Division." I paused, letting it sink in. "Every forgery you made, every fake signature, every shell company I've prosecuted, hundreds of criminals who tried exactly what you're doing." Rachel's face drained of color. 37,000 in fraudulent credit cards, 348,000 in reverse mortgage fraud, years of lies. I stepped closer. "And you thought a retired federal analyst wouldn't notice?" Daniel's voice cracked. "We were trying to help. You were trying to steal from a federal agent." My voice turned to ice. "And now the FBI is involved. Thomas Brennan, your loan officer, was arrested 3 days ago. He's cooperating. Diane Cruz, the woman who impersonated me, has a warrant out for her arrest. Alan Foster, the notary, is under investigation. And all of you," I gestured at the 3 of them, "are about to be charged with conspiracy fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft." Emily began to cry. Rachel grabbed Daniel's arm as if to steady herself. "For 41 years, I said, my voice trembling with controlled fury, I sacrificed everything for you. I adopted you, Daniel. I raised you alone after your father died. I gave you every opportunity, and you repaid me by planning to have me declared insane. But you didn't know," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "that I'm not some helpless old woman. I'm a retired FBI analyst, and I've been 3 steps ahead of you from the moment I escaped." I turned to Andrew, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. "Mr. Miller, if they attempt to list my property or claim authority over my assets, please contact my attorney, Richard Walsh, immediately. I'll provide his card." Of course," Andrew stammered. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Richard's associate, a young paralegal with a camera, had been documenting everything from the corner. Witnesses, evidence, all of it recorded. As I reached the exit, I turned back one last time. This meeting is over. The next time we speak, we'll be in court. I walked out into the bright November morning, my heels clicking on the marble. Behind me, I heard Daniel's voice rising in panic, Rachel trying to shush him, Emily sobbing. The parking lot was nearly empty. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps running behind me. Mom, wait. I stopped and turned. Daniel stood 20 feet away, his face red, his suit jacket askew. This isn't over. I looked at him, this stranger I'd raised, this man who'd tried to destroy me, and smiled coldly. "Oh, Daniel," I said softly, "it's only just beginning. Mrs. Morrison." Marcus said carefully, "Your son has been living a double life, literally." I set down my coffee cup in Suite 1012, the morning light from Elliott Bay streaming through the windows. It was day 15, 3 days after the confrontation at Miller Premier Properties, and I thought I'd already heard the worst. I was wrong. Marcus opened his laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen, surveillance photographs. Daniel standing on the doorstep of a modern apartment building, kissing a woman I'd never seen. Daniel at a playground pushing a little girl on a swing. Daniel at a grocery store, a small boy riding in the cart. "Her name is Lauren Carter," Marcus said quietly. 36 years old. They've been married for 4 years. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Married. Yes, bigamy. Daniel married Lauren in Portland in 2020 while still legally married to Rachel. They have 2 children together, Jake, 5 years old, and Lily, 3. I stared at the photographs. The little boy had Daniel's dark curls. The little girl had his eyes. My grandchildren. Children I'd never known existed. Where, I whispered. Portland, Pearl District, a 2-bedroom apartment at 1247 Northwest Lovejoy Street. Rent is $2,800 a month. Daniel's been paying it for 6 years. 6 years. I did the math automatically, my FBI training kicking in even through the shock. $2,800 a month times 12 months times 6 years. $201,600. That's not all, Marcus said, pulling up bank records. I traced the financial trail. Over the past 6 years, Daniel has funneled $468,000 from your accounts to support the Portland family. Rent, groceries, daycare, medical expenses, everything. $468,000, nearly $500,000, stolen from me to build a life I'd never been told about. Lauren doesn't know, Marcus continued. She believes Daniel is a divorced businessman who travels frequently for work. She has no idea he has another wife, another daughter, or that the money supporting her family is stolen. The business trips, I said, my voice hollow. All those weekends he said he was going to conferences, training sessions, client meetings. Portland, Marcus confirmed. Every 2 weeks like clockwork. He'd leave Friday morning, return Sunday night. Playing father and husband there, then coming back to play the same roles here. I looked at the photographs again. Lauren was pretty blonde, younger than Rachel, smiling in every picture. Jake and Lily looked happy, healthy, loved. They had no idea their father was a criminal. How did you find them? I asked. Phone records, credit card statements. I traced a pattern of purchases in Portland children's clothing stores, pediatrician appointments, family restaurants. I followed the trail and found the apartment. I've been surveilling it for 3 days. He pulled up more photos. Daniel leaving the apartment Monday morning in a suit. Daniel returning with takeout Wednesday evening. Daniel at a park. Thursday afternoon, Lily on his shoulders, Jake running ahead. A perfect family, built on lies and my money. Does Rachel know? I asked. I don't believe so, but when she finds out... Marcus paused. It's going to be nuclear. I thought about Rachel, her coldness, her calculations, her affair with Scott Henderson. She'd been planning to leave Daniel once they secured my assets, but this would destroy any remaining loyalty. What about Emily? I asked suddenly. You mentioned investigating her baby's father. Marcus's expression shifted, growing darker. Kyle Anderson, 34 years old, married financial advisor. I'm still building the case, but there are some troubling connections. I need to go to Portland to interview Lauren. She deserves to know the truth about Daniel. While I'm there, I'll dig deeper into Kyle's background. Mrs. Morrison, there's more to this story. I can feel it. What do you mean? I mean, everything is connected. The gambling debts, the reverse mortgage conspiracy. Scott Henderson, Kyle Anderson, your son's double life. He leaned forward. This isn't just a family falling apart. This is a coordinated web of deception, and I think there's a center to it we haven't found yet. I looked at the photographs of Jake and Lily again, 5 years old and 3 years old. Innocent, unaware that their entire lives were built on fraud. "They're my grandchildren," I said softly. "Daniel stole them from me, too." Marcus's voice gentled. "When this goes to trial, Lauren will likely seek full custody and cut Daniel out completely. You could petition for visitation rights, build a relationship with them. 2 more grandchildren, 2 more chances at family, but only after their world was destroyed." "I want you to go to Portland," I said. "Tell Lauren the truth. She deserves to know. And find out everything you can about Kyle Anderson. If he's connected to this conspiracy..." "I'll find it," Marcus promised. He closed his laptop and stood. "I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'll be gone for 3 days. In the meantime, stay in the hotel. Richard is filing the bigamy charges this week. When Rachel finds out, she's going to explode." After Marcus left, I sat alone in the suite staring at the printed photographs he'd left behind. Jake on the swing laughing, Lily on Daniel's shoulders, her arms around his neck, Lauren smiling at the camera, unaware her entire life was a lie. I thought about Emily, 19, and pregnant her baby's father, a mystery I was only beginning to unravel. I thought about Rachel cold and calculating about to discover her husband had built an entire second family while planning to steal from his mother. And I thought about Daniel, the little boy I'd adopted 41 years ago who'd grown into a man capable of bigamy, fraud, and destruction on a scale I could barely comprehend. Layer after layer after layer. Every day Marcus uncovered another lie. Every day the web grew larger. And somewhere at the center there was still something I hadn't found. Marcus left for Portland the next morning. The secrets were multiplying faster than I could process them. The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my coffee cup in suite 1012, my hands suddenly numb. Marcus stood by the window, backlit by the gray Seattle morning. He'd returned from Portland overnight, and the folder on the table between us was thicker than ever. "Show me," I said quietly. He opened the folder and pulled out bank statements. October 2023. A $10,000 wire transfer from Daniel Morrison to Kyle Anderson. The memo line says consulting fee, but the timing aligns perfectly with when Kyle started pursuing Emily. I stared at the statement, the numbers swimming before my eyes. There's more. Marcus laid out a series of screenshots, text messages between Daniel and Kyle. Daniel, October 15th, 2023. Is it done? Kyle, October 18th, 2023. Making progress. She trusts me. Daniel, November 3rd, 2023. Need results. Clock's ticking. Kyle, November 20th, 2023. She's pregnant. Confirmed this morning. I'm out. Daniel, November 20th, 2023. Good. Stay gone. If she asks, you were never serious. Make it hurt. I pressed my hand over my mouth, bile rising in my throat. Kyle Anderson is 34, married, a financial advisor. Marcus continued. He owed Daniel $15,000 from a poker game. Daniel offered to forgive the debt and pay him $10,000 on top if he'd seduce Emily, get her pregnant, and disappear. Kyle agreed. Why, I whispered, why would Daniel do that to his own daughter? Marcus's jaw tightened. Crisis, sympathy. Emily pregnant and abandoned would make you more likely to help financially. It was calculated, Mrs. Morrison. He used his daughter's body as a pawn. I thought of Emily, 19, pregnant alone. The girl who'd laughed in the kitchen about burning my gifts. But before that, she'd been manipulated by her own father into a pregnancy designed to exploit me. Does she know? I asked. Not yet, but there's something else. Marcus pulled out another set of messages, these between Daniel and Rachel. Rachel, December 2023. What if she figures it out? What if Helen finds the money trail? Daniel, December 2023. She won't, but if everything falls apart, we have a backup. Rachel, December 2023. The planted evidence. Daniel, December 2023. Yeah. Pills in Emily's room. Fake texts about dealers. If we need a scapegoat, Emily takes the fall. She's 19, pregnant, emotional. Easy to frame. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. They were going to frame their own daughter. Yes. Make her look like a drug user, unstable, incompetent to manage money. Shift all the blame onto her if the guardianship plan collapsed. I walked to the window, my reflection ghostly in the glass. Emily had been cruel to me, yes, but she'd been raised by monsters. I need to tell her I said. I recommend waiting, Marcus said carefully. She's still living with them. If she confronts Daniel, I'll handle it. I turned back to him. But first, there's something else I need to do. That evening, I went live. I sat at the small desk in Suite 1012, my laptop positioned carefully, the hotel room's soft lighting creating a warm backdrop. I'd spent the afternoon preparing writing notes, organizing evidence, steadying my nerves. At 8 p.m., I clicked Start Live Video on Facebook. Within minutes, the viewer count began climbing. 47 viewers, 139 viewers, 502 viewers. I took a breath and began. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 68 years old. I'm a retired FBI financial crimes analyst. And for the past 14 months, my son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter have been conspiring to steal my life. The viewer count jumped. 1,243 viewers. I spoke for 30 minutes, my voice steady and clear. I explained the kitchen recording, the guardianship plan, the reverse mortgage fraud. I played excerpts of the audio, Rachel's cold voice discussing Plan B, Daniel's calculations about selling the house, Emily's cruelty about my gifts. The comments section exploded. Oh my God, this is heartbreaking. I hope they all go to jail. You are so strong, ma'am. 3,891 viewers. I continued. I told them about the credit card fraud, the gambling debts, the secret Portland family. I showed photographs, Marcus's surveillance images of Daniel with Lauren, Jake, and Lily. I explained the bigamy, the $468,000 stolen to support a family I'd never known existed. 5,672 viewers. And then I told them about Kyle Anderson. He orchestrated her trauma to create a crisis he could exploit for sympathy and money. The comments section went silent for a moment, then erupted. What? That's evil. Call the police now! 7,034 viewers. My phone rang. Daniel. I looked at the camera, then at the phone. An idea sparked. My son is calling me right now, I said. I'm going to answer. You're all witnesses. I put the call on speaker and held the phone near the laptop microphone. Hello, Daniel. What the hell are you doing? His voice was raw, panicked. You're on Facebook. You're telling Mom you need to stop this right now. You're humiliating the family. I'm telling the truth. You're lying. You're sick. You need help. And when this is over, we're going to prove it. We're going to prove you're incompetent and what, Daniel, lock me in a nursing home, steal my house, because that's what you said you'd do. I have the recording. You're twisting everything. I have 43 minutes of audio, Daniel. I have bank statements. I have text messages between you and Kyle Anderson. I have evidence of bigamy, fraud, conspiracy. You think you're so smart, he snarled, his voice shaking. You think you've won. This isn't over, Mom. You're going to regret this. You're going to regret all of it. Is that a threat, Daniel? Silence, then. I'm your son. You owe me. I owe you nothing. My voice was ice. Goodbye, Daniel. I hung up. The viewer count had climbed to 7,211. The comments were a flood. He just threatened you on live TV. That's evidence for court. 7,000 witnesses just heard him admit everything. I looked into the camera. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for bearing witness. The truth is public now, and it's only just beginning. I ended the stream at 11 p.m. By 11:15, Richard had called. Mrs. Morrison, that was either brilliant or reckless, possibly both. We'll use the recording in court. Daniel just incriminated himself to 7,000 people. By 11:30, Marcus texted, check social media. It's spreading. By midnight, I was scrolling through shares, comments, news outlet inquiries. The video had been viewed over 50,000 times. And then I saw it. A new live stream posted 20 minutes ago. Rachel Morrison, the real story about my mother-in-law, 12,483 viewers. I clicked on it. Rachel sat in my kitchen perfectly composed, tears in her eyes. I know many of you have seen Helen Morrison's video, she said, her voice trembling. And I want to tell you the truth. My mother-in-law is suffering from severe mental illness. We've been trying to help her, but she's refusing treatment. Tonight, she made terrible accusations against our family, and I stopped the video, my heart pounding. The battle had gone digital. Rachel's face filled my screen, tears streaming down her cheeks. My mother-in-law is a manipulative woman playing the victim. It was day 21, and I sat in suite 1012 watching her counter live stream on my laptop. 12,483 viewers, more than I'd had. Rachel sat in my kitchen, still my kitchen, with the morning light filtering through the windows I'd cleaned 1,000 times. She looked devastated, broken, sympathetic. "Helen Morrison abandoned us without warning," she said, her voice trembling. "She disappeared, refused to answer calls, and then launched this public attack filled with lies and edited recordings. She's a wealthy woman with resources, and she's using them to destroy our family because we tried to help her get medical care." The comments section was split. "She sounds genuine. Something's off about this. Where's the proof Rachel's lying? Team Helen all the way." I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. 50-50. Public opinion was divided. Rachel's tears were working. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello? Grandma?" Emily's voice was small, broken. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill neutral ground. Emily arrived 20 minutes late, her eyes red and swollen, her pregnant belly visible under an oversized sweater. She sat down across from me without ordering anything. "Is it true?" she whispered. "About Kyle?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statement. $10,000. Daniel Morrison to Kyle Anderson, October 2023. Then the text messages. "Is it done? She's pregnant. Make it hurt." Emily's hands trembled as she scrolled through the screenshots. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. "He paid someone," she whispered. "Dad paid someone to—" Her voice broke. "I trusted him. Kyle. I thought he loved me." "I know. I thought—" She pressed her fist against her mouth, tears spilling over. "I thought it was real." I reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "There's more," I said gently. "I need you to see this." I showed her the December messages between Daniel and Rachel, the ones about planting evidence, drugs in her room, fake texts about dealers, making Emily the scapegoat. She read in silence, her breathing growing shallow. When she finished, she looked up at me with hollow eyes. "They were going to frame me, send me to jail." "Yes, while I was pregnant." Her voice was flat, numb. "They were going to put me in jail while I was pregnant with a baby they arranged for me to have. Emily." "In the kitchen," she said suddenly. "That night you recorded us, when I said those things about your gifts, about burning them." She looked down at her hands. "I was just repeating what they told me to say. Mom coached me for an hour before you got home. She said we had to sound united, that you'd give in if we all turned on you." My chest tightened. "You were manipulated, too." "I'm 19, she whispered. "I didn't know. I wanted them to love me, to approve of me, and they used that." Tears streamed down her face. They were going to throw me away. Their own daughter. I moved to the seat beside her and put my arm around her shoulders. She collapsed against me, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I said terrible things." "You were a child caught in their web," I said firmly. "You're a victim, Emily, just like me." We sat there for a long time, two women betrayed by the same people, holding each other in a coffee shop while the world outside went on without us. That evening, I called Gerald Thompson. "Mrs. Morrison," he answered immediately. "I saw the live streams. Are you all right?" "I need to see you," I said. "There's something I need to understand." We met at a park bench overlooking Lake Union, the city lights reflecting on the water. Gerald sat beside me, his weathered face gentle in the dusk. "Why did you warn me?" I asked. "You risked your job, your license. You barely knew me." Gerald was quiet for a moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small photograph. He handed it to me. A young woman with dark hair and bright eyes holding a baby, Linda Thompson, and infant Gerald. "You knew my mother," he said quietly. 40 years ago when you lived on Beacon Hill. You were neighbors. My mother was in an abusive relationship with my biological father. She was trying to leave, but she had no money, no family, nowhere to go. I stared at the photograph memory rushing back. Linda. The bruises she tried to hide. The fear in her eyes. You helped her, Gerald continued. You gave her money, helped her find a shelter, testified against my father when she pressed charges. You saved her life, Mrs. Morrison. But I stopped. She died. 6 months after you moved away, car accident. His voice was steady, but I heard the old grief underneath. But those 6 months she was free. She was safe. She told me stories about you before she died. The kind woman who'd stood up for her when no one else would. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know you were her son. I became a social worker because of her, Gerald said, because of what you did. I wanted to help people the way you helped her. And when I walked into your house that day and saw the way your son and daughter-in-law were manipulating the assessment, I knew. I knew you were in danger. And I thought. His voice broke slightly. This is how I pay it back. This is how I honor her memory. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Thank you, Gerald. Your mother would be proud. She always said, he whispered, that you were the only person who saw her, really saw her, not the bruises, not the victim, just her. We sat in silence, two people connected by a woman who died 40 years ago, by a circle of kindness that had finally come around. The next morning, Marcus called. Mrs. Morrison, I have something. Hidden camera footage from your house, Daniel and Rachel rehearsing their concerned family act, practicing their lines for the guardianship hearing. It's damning. Release it, I said. By noon, the video was everywhere. Daniel in front of a mirror practicing his worried expression. Rachel coaching him, no sound more hurt, like she broke your heart. The comment sections exploded. They were acting. Rachel is a sociopath. Helen was telling the truth. Public opinion swung back, hard. Rachel's follow-up live stream got 300 viewers. People had stopped listening. That night, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Grandma, I want to testify against them. All of them. Will you help me? I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Emily, 19 years old, pregnant, betrayed by her parents in the worst possible way. And now she wanted to fight back. I typed my response. Yes. Lauren Carter sat across from me in the hotel lobby, her children's hands clasped in hers, her face hollowed out by grief. It was day 23, and Marcus had arranged this meeting with the careful precision of someone defusing a bomb. Lauren had flown down from Portland with Jake and Lily the night before, and now she sat in Suite 1012's lobby area, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. Mrs. Morrison, she said quietly, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied gently. I wanted to meet you, and them. Jake 5 pressed against his mother's side, dark curls falling over his forehead. Lily 3 clutched a stuffed rabbit, staring at me with wide eyes. Are you Grandma Helen? Lily asked. Lauren's face crumpled. Lily, sweetheart. Yes, I said, my voice catching. I am. Jake looked up at his mother. Dad said we didn't have a grandma. The words hit me like a physical blow. Lauren closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't know about any of it. The other family, the fraud, Her voice broke. He told me he was divorced, that his ex-wife had custody of his daughter and didn't want him in their lives. I believed him. For 6 years, I believed him. I reached across the table and took her hand. You're a victim too, Lauren, just like me. He used your money, she said, her voice raw. For our rent, for Jake's preschool, she gestured helplessly at the children. Everything. Our entire life was built on stolen money. That's not your fault. I should have seen it. Her hands trembled. The way he'd disappear for weeks. The vague answers about work, I should have. You trusted him, I said firmly. That's not a crime, that's being human. Lauren pulled out her phone with shaking hands and showed me photographs. Daniel at Jake's 5th birthday party, smiling as he cut the cake. Daniel pushing Lily on a swing at a Portland park. Daniel at Christmas, Jake and Lily in matching pajamas opening presents. He was a good father to them, she whispered. That's the part I can't understand. He was kind, patient, loving, and then I found out he was lying about everything. I looked at the photos at Daniel's smile at the children's joy and felt a complicated knot of emotions. He'd been capable of love, just not for me. "Will you testify?" I asked gently. "Against Daniel?" Lauren's jaw tightened. "Yes, absolutely. He destroyed my life, my children's lives, and yours." She looked down at Jake and Lily. "They deserve to know the truth, and he deserves to face consequences." Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma Helen, do you have cookies?" I smiled through tears. "I can get you cookies, sweetheart." The next day, Kyle Anderson sat in Richard Walsh's office, flanked by his own attorney. Kyle was 34, clean-cut in a gray suit, with the kind of bland handsomeness that made him forgettable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mr. Anderson." Richard said coldly, "You're here because the FBI has offered you immunity in exchange for full cooperation. That means you tell Mrs. Morrison everything. No omissions, no lies." "Understood." Kyle nodded, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly. He finally looked at me, his expression miserable. "I owed Daniel money from poker. He offered to forgive my debt and pay me on top if I'd seduce Emily, get her pregnant, and disappear. And you agreed." He swallowed hard. "Yes, I'm married. My wife doesn't know. I thought it would be quick. Easy money. I didn't think about—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "I didn't think about Emily. What it would do to her. But you did it anyway." "Yes." His voice was barely a whisper. "I seduced her, pursued her for 2 months, made her believe I loved her, and when she told me she was pregnant, He pressed his fist against his mouth. "I told her I'd never been serious, that she was just a distraction. I made it hurt. Just like Daniel told me to." The room was silent. "I have all the text messages," Kyle said, pulling out his phone. "The bank transfer. Everything. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes to—" He looked at me, his eyes desperate. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I'll help you put him away." Richard took Kyle's phone and began copying files. "Your testimony will be critical, Mr. Anderson. Daniel Morrison orchestrated your exploitation of his daughter. That's a crime, and you're our proof." Kyle nodded, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he whispered to me. "I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. On day 26, Richard convened a strategy meeting in his office. He stood at the head of the conference table, a whiteboard behind him, covered in names, dates, charges. "Here's where we stand," he said. "The trial is set for January 15th, 6 weeks from now. We have multiple charges: reverse mortgage fraud, conspiracy identity theft, elder abuse, bigamy, credit card fraud. And we have the witnesses to prove it all." He pointed to the whiteboard. Witnesses. Helen Morrison victim, FBI analyst recordings, Gerald Thompson social worker, warning note, Marcus Webb, private investigator, surveillance evidence, Lauren Carter, bigamy victim, financial records, Kyle Anderson paid seduction text messages, bank transfer, Thomas Brennan loan officer, cooperating reverse mortgage conspiracy, Emily Morrison victim, insider testimony, Andrew Miller, real estate broker, public confrontation witness, 7,211 live stream viewers. Daniel's incriminating phone call. "This is an airtight case," Richard said. "Daniel and Rachel are looking at 15 to 20 years each, possibly more." I stared at the list of names, an army of witnesses, an avalanche of evidence. "What about Rachel?" I asked. "She's been quiet since the hidden camera footage." Richard exchanged a glance with Marcus. "She's lawyering up. We think she's going to try to cut a deal, blame everything on Daniel, claim she was coerced. Will it work? Depends on what she offers." Richard leaned forward. "But Mrs. Morrison, there's something you should know. Rachel and Daniel are turning on each other. Their attorneys are in a race to see who can betray the other first." On day 27, I returned to the hotel suite and found a package waiting for me. Inside was a small wooden box worn with age. I opened it carefully. Inside, a Father's Day card, faded and creased. On the front, a child's drawing of a stick figure labeled Mommy and another labeled Me. Inside, in a 6-year-old's shaky handwriting, "Dear Mommy, Thank you for adopting me. You are the best mom. I love you. Daniel. I sat on the edge of the bed, the card in my hands, and wept. 41 years ago, a little boy with dark curls had given me this card. He'd hugged me and said, "You saved me, Mommy." Where had that boy gone? What had I missed? I thought of Jake and Lily Daniel's other children, innocent and sweet. I thought of Emily, pregnant and betrayed. I thought of Lauren, her life built on lies. These children are innocent, I thought fiercely. Whatever happens to Daniel, I'll make sure they're cared for. I placed the card back in the box and closed it gently. Some things were worth saving. Some things were already lost. Day 28. My phone rang. "Mrs. Morrison, it's Richard. I have unexpected news." I sat up straighter. "What is it?" "The FBI wants to make a deal with Rachel. They want her to wear a wire. Get Daniel to confess to the murder conspiracy Plan B. They're offering her a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation." My heart stopped. A wire. "Yes, they'll set up a meeting. Get her to ask Daniel about Plan B. If he confesses to planning your death, it's first-degree conspiracy to commit murder. 25 years minimum." I closed my eyes. Will she do it? She's considering it. Her attorney thinks it's her best chance. And Mrs. Morrison... Richard paused. "I think she's going to take it." Rachel sat in the FBI Seattle field office, mascara smudged down her cheeks, her hands trembling in her lap. "What do you want me to do?" Special Agent Derek Sanders, 40 years old with steel gray hair and the kind of steady gaze that had broken harder people than Rachel Morrison, leaned forward across the table. "We want you to help us put your husband away for a very long time." It was day 28. I sat in the observation room next door, watching through the one-way glass. Richard Walsh stood beside me, his arms crossed. Marcus Webb leaned against the wall, silent. On the other side of the glass, Rachel looked small, broken. Nothing like the composed woman who'd live-streamed from my kitchen. Before we discussed terms, Agent Sanders said, "You need to understand why the FBI has jurisdiction in this case." Rachel blinked, confused. "I thought this is a family matter." "It's federal," Sanders interrupted. "Your mother-in-law, Helen Morrison, is a retired FBI financial crimes analyst with 27 years of service. When your husband committed fraud against her, he committed fraud against a federal agent. That's 18 U.S.C. Section 115, assaulting, kidnapping, or murdering a federal official or family member. It covers fraud and identity theft, too." Rachel's face paled. "Second," Sanders continued, "the reverse mortgage fraud involved interstate conspiracy. The loan officer, Thomas Brennan, has already testified that Daniel recruited conspirators across state lines. That's federal wire fraud. Third," Sanders said, pulling out a document, "your husband diverted Helen's federal pension funds. That's theft of federal benefits, another federal crime." He slid the paper across the table. "This isn't a state case anymore, Mrs. Morrison. This is a federal investigation, and you're looking at 10 years minimum in federal prison." Rachel's hands shook harder. I didn't know about the FBI thing. I didn't know." "You knew about the guardianship plan," Sanders said flatly. "You knew about the reverse mortgage. You knew about the Plan B discussion, the nursing home, the medication errors, the falls. You're complicit." Tears streamed down Rachel's face. "I want a deal." "We can offer you one," Sanders said. "But first, there's something you need to see." He opened a folder and laid out photographs. Daniel with Lauren, Daniel with 2 small children, Daniel at a Portland apartment kissing a blonde woman on the doorstep. Rachel stared at the photos, her breathing growing shallow. "Who is that?" she whispered. "Lauren Carter, your husband's second wife. They've been married for 4 years. He has 2 children with her, Jake, 5, and Lily, 3. He's been supporting them with money stolen from his mother. $468,000 over 6 years. Rachel's face went white, then red. "He has another family." "Yes, he's been..." Her voice broke. "He's been living with her while married to me. Every 2 weeks, the Portland business trips." Rachel's hands curled into fists on the table. "That son of a bitch, Mrs. Morrison." Sanders said quietly, "Your husband has betrayed everyone. His mother, you, his daughter, Lauren Carter. He's a con artist, a bigamist, and potentially a conspirator in attempted murder. We want to make sure he goes to prison for the rest of his life, and you can help us do that." Rachel looked up, her eyes blazing with fury. "How?" "Wear a wire. Get him to confess to Plan B, the plan to kill his mother. If he admits on tape that he intended to arrange her death, that's conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. 25 years to life." Rachel was silent for a long moment, then, "What do I get?" "Cooperation credit. Your sentence reduced from 10 years to 3. You testify against Daniel. You give us everything, every conversation, every plan, every detail. And you get him to confess." 3 years, Rachel repeated, versus 10, or more if we charge you as an accessory to attempted murder. Rachel closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were hard, cold. "I'll do it." Over the next 2 days, Rachel was trained. Agent Sanders walked her through the process: how to wear the wire, a small microphone taped under her bra, a transmitter in her jacket lining, how to guide the conversation without seeming suspicious, how to let Daniel talk. "Pretend you're loyal," Sanders instructed. "Say you need to get your story straight for trial. Ask him about Plan B, frame it as clarifying details. Let him explain. Don't push, just listen." Rachel practiced with another agent running through scenarios. Her performance was convincing. She'd been lying for years. This was just another role. On day 30, I watched through the glass as a technician fitted Rachel with the wire. She stood still, her face blank, as they taped the microphone to her skin. When they finished, she looked at herself in the mirror mounted on the wall. "For 15 years, she said quietly, I was his fool, not anymore." Agent Sanders handed her a small purse. "The transmitter's in the lining. Range is half a mile. We'll be listening in real time from a surveillance van. If you're in danger, say the word lawyer. We'll come in immediately." Rachel nodded. "When tomorrow, day 32, Daniel's being held at King County Jail pending trial. You'll visit him. Conjugal room, private, no guards. Just you, him, and the wire." Rachel's jaw tightened. "He'll believe I'm on his side." "He always has." "Good," Sanders said. "Make him believe it one last time." Day 32. I sat in the FBI surveillance van parked 2 blocks from King County Jail. Richard Marcus, Agent Sanders, and 2 other agents crowded the small space headsets on, listening to static as Rachel walked through security. My heart pounded. On the monitor, we watched grainy security footage. Rachel entering the visiting room. Daniel standing smiling, reaching out to take her hands. He had no idea what was about to happen. "Thank God you're here," Daniel said, tears welling in his eyes. "You're the only one who still believes in me." Rachel sat across from him in the King County Jail visiting room, a small gray space with cinder block walls and a metal table bolted to the floor. She wore a navy blazer, her hair pulled back, her face carefully composed. Daniel reached across the table and took her hands. She didn't pull away. In the FBI surveillance van 2 blocks away, I sat frozen headphones on, listening to every word. Agent Sanders sat beside me, his expression unreadable. Richard Walsh leaned forward, his jaw tight. Marcus stood silent in the corner. On the audio feed, I heard Rachel's voice, soft and sympathetic. "I'm here, Daniel. We're in this together." What Daniel didn't know, 30 minutes earlier, Agent Sanders had read him his rights on a separate recording. FBI protocol. This was a federal sting operation. Every word Daniel said could and would be used against him in court. Sanders had played the recording for me before Rachel entered the room. Daniel's voice confused and defensive. "Why are you reading me my rights? I haven't done anything. I'm just meeting my wife." "Sanders, standard procedure, Mr. Morrison. You're under investigation for federal crimes. Anything you say during this visit may be recorded and used as evidence." Daniel had signed the waiver. He thought it was routine jail protocol. He had no idea. Now in the visiting room, Rachel leaned forward. "Daniel, we need to get our stories straight before the trial. Helen's lawyers are building a case, and we can't afford any inconsistencies." Daniel nodded eagerly. "I know. I've been thinking about it. We need to present a united front, say we were trying to help her, that she's confused, paranoid." "Exactly," Rachel said smoothly. "But I need to understand everything, what really happened. No secrets between us." "Of course." Daniel squeezed her hands. "What do you want to know?" Rachel paused, then spoke carefully. "In the kitchen that night, when we talked about the nursing home, you mentioned Plan B. Daniel's face flickered just for a second, but Rachel pressed on. I need to know what that meant, she said, because if Helen's lawyers ask me on the stand, I need to be able to explain it, or deny it. But I need to know the truth. Daniel hesitated. Then in a low voice, it was a backup plan, in case the guardianship didn't work. What kind of backup? He looked down at their joined hands. Mom Helen was going to Maplewood, that nursing home, $5,000 a month. But we couldn't afford to keep her there long term. It was cutting into our profits. So I had to contact one of the staff there. He said, accidents happen, elderly patients, medication errors, falls in the bathroom. Daniel's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He said it would look natural. No one would question it. Within 6 months, maybe less. In the van, I pressed my hand over my mouth. Tears streamed down my face. My son had planned to murder me. Rachel's voice still calm. You were going to arrange her death. It wasn't, Daniel's voice cracked. It wasn't like that. It was mercy. She was old. She wouldn't have known. A medication overdose, she'd just fall asleep, or a fall, quick, painless. Better than years in a nursing home, right? Right, Rachel said softly. And then we'd inherit everything. Exactly. Relief flooded Daniel's voice. The house, the savings, the pension, everything. We'd finally be free. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, I understand. What else do I need to know? Daniel exhaled. There's more. Tell me. He looked around the empty room, lowered his voice further. The Portland thing. Lauren. What about her? She can't testify, Daniel said urgently. We need to discredit her. Say she's lying, that I never married her, that the kids aren't mine. Are they? Rachel asked, her voice hardening slightly. Daniel blinked. What? Are the kids yours, Daniel? He stared at her, then quietly, yes. And you've been married to her for 4 years. How did you? His face paled. Rachel, I can explain. Just tell me the truth. Her voice was ice now. All of it. Daniel's hands trembled. Yes. Okay. Yes. I married Lauren in 2020. I have 2 kids with her, Jake and Lily. I've been supporting them with... He stopped. With Helen's money, Rachel finished. I didn't have a choice. Daniel's voice rose, desperate now. I was drowning in debt. The gambling, the loan sharks, they were going to kill me. I needed the money, and Mom had it. She was just sitting on it, not using it, so you stole from her. I borrowed from her. I was going to pay it back once she was dead. Daniel went silent. Rachel leaned forward. What about Emily? What about Kyle Anderson? Daniel closed his eyes. That was necessary. Explain. Emily's pregnancy. It created sympathy, made Helen more likely to give us money. I owed Kyle from poker $15,000. I offered to forgive the debt and pay him $10,000 if he'd seduce Emily, get her pregnant, and disappear. It wasn't rape. She was 19, he was 34, married. You paid him to manipulate her. She was going to get pregnant eventually anyway. Daniel's voice cracked, defensive now. At least this way we controlled the timing. We needed leverage, Rachel. You needed to exploit your own child. I did what I had to do. Daniel slammed his hands on the table. For us, for our future. I spent 15 years pretending to have a job I didn't have, pretending to be someone I wasn't, lying every single day, all to keep us afloat. I didn't have a choice. Rachel stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood up. You did have a choice, Daniel. She opened her blazer. Taped to her chest, clearly visible, was a small microphone. A wire running down to the transmitter clipped to her waistband. Daniel's face drained of all color. What? The FBI has been listening, Rachel said coldly. To everything. The murder plot, the bigamy, Kyle, all of it. Daniel lurched to his feet, his chair screeching back. You bitch! The door burst open. Agent Sanders and 3 other agents stormed in, weapons drawn. Daniel Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder fraud, bigamy, and elder abuse. Daniel tried to lunge at Rachel, but the agents grabbed him, forcing him to the ground. He screamed, thrashing his voice raw and animal. I didn't have a choice. I had no choice. Rachel looked down at him, her face blank. You chose evil, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked out. Outside the jail, Rachel handed the wire to Agent Sanders. Did you get it all? she asked, her voice shaking now, the composure finally cracking. Every word Sanders said. Conspiracy to commit murder, premeditated. He's looking at 20 years minimum, possibly life. Rachel looked back at the jail, at the barred windows and the gray concrete. Good, she said. In the surveillance van, I sat with my head in my hands, sobbing. Richard placed a hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Morrison, you have him. It's over. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the end of everything. My son, the little boy I'd adopted 41 years ago, had just confessed to planning my murder, on tape, to his wife, who'd been wearing an FBI wire. And he'd said I didn't have a choice, as if loving me had been a burden too great to bear. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, cameras lined the back wall. The destruction of my family had become national news. It was day 35, mid-November 2024, and the trial had begun. I sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, Richard Walsh beside me. Emily sat on my other side, 7 months pregnant, now her hands folded protectively over her belly. Behind us, I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes, journalists, curious onlookers, people who'd followed the live streams and wanted to see how it ended. At the defense table, Daniel sat in a gray suit, his face gaunt and pale. Rachel sat 20 feet away at a separate table with her own attorney. They hadn't looked at each other once. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, banged her gavel. The United States versus Daniel Morrison and Rachel Morrison, opening statements. The federal prosecutor, a tall woman named Margaret Collins, stood and addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this case falls under federal jurisdiction for 3 reasons. First, the victim, Helen Morrison, is a retired FBI financial crimes analyst with 27 years of service. Crimes against federal agents and their families are prosecuted under 18 U.S.C. Section 115. Second, the defendants committed interstate fraud conspiracy involving parties in multiple states. Third, they diverted the victim's federal pension benefits. These are federal crimes. She paused, letting it sink in. The wire recording you're about to hear was obtained legally. The defendant, Daniel Morrison, was read his Miranda rights before the conversation. He signed a waiver. His wife, Rachel Morrison, wore a wire as part of a federal cooperation agreement. Everything you will hear is admissible evidence. Then she played the recording. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom. It was a backup plan, medication errors, falls in the bathroom. It would look natural, within 6 months, maybe less. The courtroom rippled with gasps. I closed my eyes, hearing it again, my son planning my death. When the recording ended, the prosecutor looked at the jury. This is a case about a man who weaponized his daughter, betrayed 2 wives, and conspired to murder his mother. Let's review the evidence. The trial lasted 5 days. Day 1, Rachel's testimony. She took the stand in a simple gray dress, her hands clasped, her voice steady. She admitted to the guardianship plan, the kitchen conspiracy, the knowledge of Daniel's crimes. I was coerced, she said quietly. Daniel controlled the finances. He told me we'd lose everything if I didn't cooperate. I was afraid. Under cross-examination, Richard didn't go easy on her. You knew about Plan B, didn't you, Mrs. Morrison? Yes. And you didn't report it to authorities. I was scared. Scared enough to help plan elder abuse. Scared enough to steal, but not scared enough to stop a murder plot. Rachel's face crumpled. I'm sorry, I should have stopped it. I know that now. The jury's faces were unreadable. Day 2, Emily's testimony. My granddaughter took the stand, visibly pregnant, her voice shaking. She testified about Kyle Anderson, the paid seduction, the orchestrated pregnancy, the abandonment. Plant drugs in my room, make me the scapegoat. I reached out from my seat and she looked at me. I nodded. You're doing the right thing. She took a breath and continued. Daniel's attorney tried to discredit her, but Emily held firm. When she finished, she walked past the defense table without looking at her father. Day 3, my testimony. I took the stand and played the kitchen, recording the 43-minute audio of Daniel, Rachel, and Emily planning to destroy me. Rachel's voice. Once the paperwork is settled and the assets are secured, we move to Plan B. Emily, I swear, once this is done, I'm burning every awful gift she ever gave me. When it ended, I looked directly at Daniel. You were my son. I said, my voice steady. I adopted you when you were 2 years old. I raised you alone after your father died. I gave you everything I had, and you could have had anything. All you had to do was ask." Daniel stared at the table, his jaw tight. "Instead, you stole from me. You lied to me for years. You planned to have me declared insane and locked away. And when that wasn't enough, you planned to kill me." My voice broke slightly. "You were my son, and I loved you." I stepped down. Day 4, supporting witnesses. Kyle Anderson testified pale and miserable about the $15,000 poker debt and the $10,000 payment. Lauren Carter testified about the bigamy, the stolen money, the 6 years of lies. Thomas Brennan, the corrupt loan officer, testified about the reverse mortgage conspiracy in exchange for immunity. Gerald Thompson testified about the warning note, the assessment, the manipulation he'd witnessed. The defense had nothing. No credible rebuttal, no character witnesses. Daniel didn't take the stand. Day 5, verdict and sentencing. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. On the charge of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, guilty. On the charge of elder abuse, guilty. On the charge of fraud, guilty. On the charge of bigamy, guilty. On all counts, guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel for silence. Then she turned to Daniel. "Mr. Morrison, you weaponized your own daughter. You betrayed 2 wives. You conspired to murder your mother, a woman who sacrificed everything for you. This court finds your actions particularly egregious." She handed down the sentence. 18 years in federal prison, no parole. Daniel's face went white. Rachel received 3 years for cooperation and coercion mitigation. As the bailiffs led Daniel away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. No remorse, only rage. I looked away. That chapter was closed. 9 months later, in June 2025, I stood in the garden of my new home watching Emily plant roses. The house was smaller than the Victorian I'd lost a 2-bedroom cottage in Ballard, with wide windows and a backyard that caught the morning sun. I'd bought it for $320,000 cash from the settlement after the trial. It was modest, manageable, mine. Emily knelt in the dirt, her hands deep in the soil, her pregnant belly enormous now. 9 months. Any day. "Grandma, does this look straight?" she called, gesturing to the rose bush she'd just planted. I walked over my knees, aching slightly, but my heart light. "Perfect." She smiled up at me, dirt smudged on her cheek. This girl, this young woman, had transformed in 9 months. She'd started online classes in legal studies focused on elder abuse advocacy. She wanted to help people, like me. She wanted to make sure no one else went through what we had. We cooked together. We laughed together. Some nights she cried and I held her. Some nights I cried and she held me. We were healing. That afternoon, Emily's water broke. I drove her to Swedish Medical Center, my hand steady on the wheel, her hand gripping mine. 8 hours of labor. I stayed with her the entire time, coaching her breathing, wiping her forehead, holding her hand through every contraction. At 9:47 p.m. on June 18, 2025, Linda Morrison was born. 6 pounds, 8 ounces, full head of dark hair, bright blue eyes that looked exactly like Emily's. The nurse placed her in Emily's arms, and my granddaughter, my daughter now in every way that mattered, looked down at the baby and wept. "She's perfect," Emily whispered. I sat beside the bed, tears streaming down my face. "What are you going to name her?" I asked softly. Emily looked up at me, her eyes shining. "Linda, after Gerald's mother, because you saved me, Grandma, just like you saved her 40 years ago. And I want my daughter to carry that kindness forward." I couldn't speak. I just reached out and touched the baby's tiny hand. 3 generations, together, whole. Later that week, I packed away the last of Daniel's childhood things. The baby's shoes from the memory box, the Father's Day card, photographs of a little boy with dark curls and solemn eyes. I grieved for that child, the one I'd adopted, the one I'd loved. But I didn't grieve for the man he'd become. I placed the box in the attic, closed the door, and walked back downstairs to where Emily was feeding Linda on the couch. Some chapters close, some doors lock, and that's okay. My new life took shape slowly. I traveled. Small trips, Vancouver, Portland, the San Juan Islands, places I'd never had time to visit when I was raising Daniel. I established the Linda Thompson Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention, funded by the remainder of the settlement. We offered free legal consultations, PI services, and emergency housing for elderly victims of financial exploitation. In 6 months, we'd helped 43 people. Gerald served on the board. So did Marcus Webb. So did Richard Walsh. Once a month, I drove to Portland to visit Jake and Lily. Lauren had full custody now, and I'd quietly set up a college fund for each child. They called me Grandma Helen. We went to parks. We baked cookies. They had no memory of their father, and I didn't try to give them one. Rachel sent letters from prison. I didn't open them. Daniel sent one letter. I burned it. Gerald visited every Sunday, always bringing flowers for the garden. We'd sit on the porch, drink tea, and talk about his mother, about second chances, about how kindness echoes forward through generations. One evening in late June, I sat in the nursery holding Linda while Emily slept. The baby was 2 weeks old, tiny and perfect in my arms. She made small, snuffling sounds, her fingers curled around my thumb. I thought about everything that had happened: the kitchen recording, the escape, the trial. The 41 years I'd loved a son who'd tried to destroy me. People ask me if I regret adopting Daniel. The answer is no, because Daniel gave me Emily, and Emily gave me Linda. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. It's about who chooses you and who you choose in return. I lost a son, but I gained a daughter and a granddaughter who chose me the way I chose them. And that is the family I was always meant to have. I looked down at Linda, her eyes closed, her breathing soft and steady. "Welcome home, sweetheart," I whispered. "Welcome home." Looking back on this family drama story, I've learned that trust without boundaries is not love. It's vulnerability waiting to be exploited. God gave me the strength to see clearly when I needed it most, and for that, I'm grateful. He showed me that even in the darkest betrayal, there's a path forward if you're willing to walk it. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the red flags because you love someone. Don't turn off your instincts to protect a relationship. Don't sacrifice your safety for someone else's comfort. I did, and it nearly cost me everything. If you're living your own family revenge story, or worse, if you're the victim of one, know this: you are not alone. Document everything. Trust your gut. Seek help before it's too late. God doesn't ask us to be foolish in the name of loyalty. He asks us to be wise. This family drama story taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I forgave the little boy I adopted, but I will never reconcile with the man who tried to destroy me. And that's okay. God understands the difference. My advice: protect yourself first. Love fiercely but never blindly. And remember, family revenge stories like mine don't have to be yours. Break the cycle. Choose differently. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below your thoughts, your own experiences, or even just a word of encouragement for others who might be going through something similar. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more stories that matter. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I know this wasn't easy to hear, and please remember, the stories that follow may contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your needs. God bless you all.